Have you ever walked into a place that felt alive? Watching you, whispering secrets you couldn't understand. Have you ever followed a path that seemed safe until you realized it was leading you somewhere you could never return from? And tell me, have you ever trusted someone so deeply that doubt itself felt like betrayal? In the year 9 AD, the Roman Empire marched deep into Germania, believing the land could be tamed, its people subdued, its silence conquered. But the deeper they went, the less Rome's power seemed to matter.
I am Publius Quintilius Varus, governor of these northern provinces. The emperor entrusts me to bring justice and Roman order where chaos once reigned. Germania may be vast, see, but Rome's reach is longer still. And yet, I am not blind to its dangers. These forests, they can swallow legions whole. That is why I rely on a man I trust completely, Arminius, a loyal officer and son of this land. He will be my eyes where Rome's light fades.
But trust is fragile, and in Teutoburg, it will shatter like a sword struck by lightning. Do you want to know what happens when even the might of Rome cannot see the trap waiting in the dark? Welcome to the podcast, Battles That Shaped Europe.
We shall never surrender!
Battle of Teutoburg Forest, 9 CE. Part 1. The World Before the Battle. Before the forest closed its jaws around the legions, Rome stood at the height of its glory. From the deserts of Syria to the Atlantic shores, the eagle of the empire cast its shadow over half the known world. Order, law, and Latin ruled where chaos once lived. Rome had never been stronger, nor more certain of its destiny. But when power stretches too far, doesn't it start to forget where its borders truly lie? Every empire believes its light can outshine the darkness beyond. The world had changed since the days of Actium. Back then, Rome had turned its sword upon itself. Citizens fighting citizens. Ideals drowning beneath ambition. When the sea turned red with Roman blood and silence fell over the wrecks, one man rose from the storm, Octavian, soon to be called Augustus. He promised peace, and the weary world believed him.
And he delivered it. Augustus ended chaos, restored faith in Roma. No more generals fighting for crowns, only one ruler. Una visione. Unity.
And perhaps he had a point. Under Augustus, the civil wars stopped, and Rome began to breathe again. The legions that once faced each other now guarded its borders. Roads bound provinces together like veins of stone. Cities grew brighter, grander, and for the first time in a century, a Roman could walk the streets without hearing the drums of rebellion. But peace, you know what? It can be heavy. The Senate still gathered, sure, but few dared speak their minds. The poor lived off grain and games, while the rich lived off favor. Maybe Rome hadn't escaped its struggles. Maybe it just learned how to hide them behind marble.
Order isn't oppression. The emperor gives Roma what it needs. Disciplina, prosperità, scopo. The people are safe. That is true peace.
That's how Rome saw it. And for a time, it worked. Even its enemies began to bow their heads. To the east stood Parthia, Rome's mirror, and its old humiliation. Decades ago, the Parthians crushed Crassus and took the golden eagles of his legions, those sacred emblems of Roman pride. For years they hung in Parthian halls, trophies of Rome's shame. But Augustus changed that, not with swords, but with patience. He negotiated their return, turning humiliation into triumph. The lost eagles came home, and the people cheered, as if the gods themselves had forgiven the past.
A victory, senza guerra. That's what makes Augustus great. He restores honor through reason, not distraction. The same peace he brought to Parthia, he will bring to Germania. Through me.
And you can see why he believed it. After Parthia, who could doubt that Rome's reach was endless? Still, beyond the Rhine, there was a world that refused to bow. Germania wasn't one kingdom, but 1,000 fragments, tribes bound by blood, pride, and old grudges. Cherusci, Chatti, Marcomanni, Bructeri, each standing alone but sharing one thing: freedom. No palaces, no paved roads, no emperors. Their lives were simple, but their sense of honor ran deep. Their wealth came from cattle, their strength from loyalty. They traded amber, furs, and iron when it suited them, but they depended on no one. They lived close to the land and the forest. It was their home, their sanctuary.
They're brave, I give them that. But they live like the past never ended. No cities, no law, no structure. Imagine what they could become under Roma's guidance. Roads, commerce, knowledge. La civiltà stessa.
And maybe he's not wrong. Rome's vision was always to build, not just to conquer. But to the tribes, the forest wasn't wilderness. It was sacred. Every river had a spirit. Every tree, an ancestor. The Romans saw land. They saw life. And you can't draw borders on something like that.
Freedom without rule is chaos, and chaos devours itself. Rome offers them something lasting, peace, prosperity. They just need to see it.
That was the emperor's dream. Peace through order, unity through reason. And for that, he needed men like Publius Quintilius Varus, educated, loyal, utterly devoted to Rome's cause.
It's more than duty. It's belief. The emperor trusts me to bring Roma's peace here, and I will not fail him.
He says it with such certainty. And why shouldn't he? Rome had faced down every rival, turned defeat into legend. Even now, in the east, Parthia watched quietly. In the north, new alliances stirred among the tribes. Maroboduus of the Marcomanni, and a younger warrior among the Cherusci, one who knew both sides of the frontier. Arminius. He was Roman-trained, German-born, a man who could walk in two worlds. And soon, those worlds would meet.
Arminius is loyal. He has served Rome well. Germania trusts him, and so do I. With him beside me, this land will finally know peace.
In the year 9 AD, 3 Roman legions marched into Germania carrying more than banners. They carried faith. Faith in their empire, in their leader, in the peace they believed was unbreakable. But the forest had its own ideas. Part 2. The armies gather. You can almost hear them before you see them. Marching, breathing, the rhythm of thousands of boots pressing into soft, wet earth. 3 Roman legions, moving as one living creature. It's an incredible sight. Lines so precise that even the forest seems to hold its breath. Nearly 18,000 legionaries, trained, disciplined, shields gleaming with the eagle of Rome. Add in auxiliary troops, cavalry, engineers, servants, camp followers, and you have close to 25,000 souls, moving through Germania. It's not just an army, it's a traveling city, an empire in motion.
Each step they take is order made visible. Disciplina, unità, fedeltà. They know their duty, and they know who leads them. The Emperor's trust flows through their ranks, and I bear it proudly.
He means it too. Publius Quinctilius Varus wasn't just another soldier chasing glory. He was born into wealth, educated in law, a man of diplomacy and refinement. Before Germania, he governed Syria, one of the richest provinces in the empire. His rule was steady, though some whispered he ruled with too heavy a hand. Maybe that's what Augustus saw in him. A man who could bring Roman order to wild lands, no matter the cost.
Peace demands firmness. Without law, peace is only an illusion.
You can't really argue with that, can you? And you know what? It worked elsewhere, at least for a while. But Germania wasn't Syria. No cities to tax, no nobles to reason with. Only tribes, forests, and the uneasy loyalty of men who remembered the sting of Roman conquest. At the head of the column rides Arminius, Varus's most trusted ally. To the Romans, he's the perfect bridge between two worlds. A noble of the Cherusci tribe, educated in Latin, trained in Roman warfare, knighted as an equus, a Roman citizen. He fought for Rome in the Balkans, earned his honors through courage and strategy.
Arminius has been inestimabile. He knows every road, every river crossing. The men trust him, and I do too. Germania listens to him, in ways it cannot yet listen to me.
That's how every empire begins its work, with conviction. But far beyond these roads, beneath the canopy of trees, another army is gathering. They don't wear polished armor. They don't march in lines. They carry no banners, but they know these forests better than any Roman ever could. Across the valleys, through riverbanks, thousands of tribesmen are uniting under a single purpose. No one knows their exact number, 15, 20,000, maybe more, but they share something Rome's legions do not, a single will, born of vengeance. And at their center stands Arminius. He moves quietly between camps, whispering in their own tongue of freedom, of ancestors, of oaths broken by Rome. The tribes that once fought each other now drink from the same cup, sharpening spears under the same stars.
They'll never unite for long. Their pride divides them. It always has. Rome is strong because Rome is una cosa sola. The tribes, they're too wild to stand together.
That's what every Roman commander believed, until this one. As Varus's legions push deeper into the forest, the road narrows, the trees close in, the sound of marching fades beneath the whisper of leaves. You know what's strange? Even the birds have gone silent. Two armies are gathering now. One beneath the eagle, shining, ordered. The other beneath the branches, unseen, but breathing with the forest itself. And between them rides the same man, Arminius. Part 3. Into the Fray. The air grew heavy with rain. The forest was quiet, too quiet. The sound of marching boots muffled in the mud, shields dull with mist. The legions moved deeper, step by step, unaware that the trees around them were already watching. That morning, the light never truly came. Only a gray dimness pressing low, as if the sky itself wanted to warn them.
Stay close to the column. Arminius will return by midday. We'll cross the ridge and make camp before nightfall.
Arminius, the trusted guide, the bridge between Rome and the forest. He had ridden ahead, smiling, promising safe passage. None questioned him. Not Varus, not the men who followed him. but the forest had swallowed him whole. And then it happened. A single cry, sharp, guttural, not Latin but Germanic, echoed through the trees. Then another, and another. The forest came alive. Spears rained from the shadows. The first line fell before they even saw their attackers. The sound of iron striking armor shattered the silence. Men turned, shields raised, but the spears came from every direction. It was as if the trees themselves were throwing them.
Santo cielo! Ambushed! Get to cover! Shields high! Shields now!
A horse screamed, then a soldier dragged into the undergrowth. The column tried to form ranks, but the road was too narrow. The men in front collided with those behind. The centurions shouted commands no one could hear over the storm of noise.
Form the line! Hold the line! Dio mio, don't break!
But formation meant nothing here. The rain poured down, turning the path into a river of mud. Shields slipped, armor dragged them down. The forest floor sucked at their feet like it wanted to keep them. Through the rain, the tribes came, not in formation, not in ranks, but in waves. Bare-chested, faces painted with ash, hair matted with blood and rain. They moved through the trees like ghosts, vanishing after every strike, reappearing where the Romans least expected.
Madonna, they're everywhere, everywhere. Stay with me. Hold the ridge. Keep your heads.
Axes, spears, short blades. Each swing followed by another scream. The sound was not battle. It was panic. The Cherusci led the charge, Arminius at their center. Behind them came the Bructeri, the Chatti, the Marsi, all tribes that had once sworn peace to Rome. Now they tore that promise apart with their bare hands.
Arminius, che diavolo stai facendo? You gave your word. This is betrayal.
But Arminius didn't answer. He was there, in the shadows, his voice among the cries of the forest. Every order he had given to Rome was now turned against it. The routes, the terrain, even the timing of the march, every step had been his design. The legions tried to fight back, but their formation dissolved. Archers couldn't see their targets. Horses panicked and trampled the wounded. Officers fell one by one, their commands swallowed by thunder.
To the standard! Rally there, presto! Move, move, before we're cut off!
The Germans didn't fight to win. They fought to erase. To erase the roads, the camps, the arrogance of Rome. They struck and vanished again, like the heartbeat of the forest itself. 3 days it went on, 3 nights of rain, fear, and mud. The Romans built barricades from their dead, trying to hold the line, but even the dead could not stop the storm.
Madre mia, they just keep coming. Where is the 17th? Someone answer me.
But the gods were silent. The only sound was the rain and the drums of the tribes, beating in the distance, slow, relentless, like thunder echoing through the woods. By the 3rd day, the legions were broken. Some tried to flee, but the paths they knew were gone, swallowed by the forest. Others were dragged from their horses, cut down before they could even draw breath. Varus's officers begged him to retreat, but there was nowhere to go.
No Roman will survive this. Not even me.
He looked around. The mud, the bodies, the fallen standards, the forest that refused to yield. Publius Quinctilius Varus had brought Rome's law into the wilderness, and the wilderness had judged him.
I served with faith. I believed in order. I stood for Rome. Sempre. If that was wrong, I die with no shame.
He drew his sword, the same blade that had once carried out the will of Augustus, and turned it upon himself. Some say he fell silently, others that he whispered the emperor's name. Either way, He met death as he had lived, proud, believing to the end in the justice of his cause. When the storm faded, the forest was still again. The trees stood where they always had, indifferent to the thousands lying beneath them. The eagles of the legions were gone. 3 banners, 3 legions, and an entire generation erased in the rain. And among the corpses, Arminius stood. For the first time in centuries, Rome's march had stopped. And in that silence, a new sound rose. The cry of a free people, echoing through the forest that had become their kingdom. Part 4. The Price of Victory. When the last cries faded beneath the trees, the forest fell quiet again. Rain pooled in the footprints of the legions, the air thick with smoke and the smell of iron. Can you picture it? A silence so deep that even the wind seemed afraid to move. 3 legions had entered those woods. None would return. The 17th, the 18th, and the 19th, gone. Their eagles torn from the fallen, lifted high on Germanic spears like banners of defiance. More than 15,000 Romans lay dead. The rest, those unlucky enough to survive, were dragged away in chains or offered to the gods of the forest. The empire that claimed to bring order to the world now lay broken in mud and mist.
Dio. 3 legions. I led them in, and none walked out. They were good men, loyal, disciplined. They followed me because they believed Rome could shape the wild, that law could master nature itself.
And maybe that belief was their undoing. Sometimes, faith blinds more than it guides. For the Germanic tribes, this was everything they had dreamed of. They had destroyed the mightiest army on earth, not with legions and walls, but with patience, deception, and the forest itself.
And I never saw it coming. They planned it all, while smiling at our campfires.
But victory never comes without a price. Across the clearing, hundreds of Germanic warriors also lay dead. Sons, brothers, fathers. They had stood shoulder to shoulder beneath the trees, maybe 5,000, maybe more, but to them, it was a sacrifice worth every drop of blood. That night, fires burned across the valleys. Drums echoed between the trees, and the names of fallen ancestors were shouted into the storm. For once, Germania did not whisper, it roared.
I thought them savages. But no. They fought with unity, with purpose. And I underestimated them.
Maybe he was right. The triumph was immense, but it couldn't last. Freedom, yes, but not unity. The tribes had no senate, no emperor, no law beyond their chieftains. How long can freedom hold when every man wants to lead?
I've seen it before. Power breaks men faster than war ever could. Even the strongest will eat their own, given time.
Old rivalries returned. Allies drifted. And Arminius, the man who had united them, stood alone. They sang his name like a god's. But gods don't live long among men. Within a decade he was betrayed, murdered by his own kin. The man who broke Rome could not rule what he'd freed.
He won the battle, but lost the peace. That is the real tragedy.
When news of the disaster reached Rome, it didn't come with trumpets. It came as a whisper. People stopped in the streets, staring. How could 3 legions simply vanish? At first, no one believed it, but soon disbelief turned to dread. Augustus, the emperor who had brought peace to a broken world, tore at his robes, crying out, "Quinctili vare, legiones rede! Varus, give me back my legions!"
If only I could, Santo Cielo, I would give them back, everyone.
He was an old man then, but the news aged him years in a single night. The numbers of the lost legions were struck from every record, never used again, as if erasing their names might erase the pain. Can you feel that silence? The silence of an empire that suddenly realized it was mortal.
And I became the shadow behind that silence.
Rome braced for invasion. Senators whispered, "The tribes will cross the Rhine." Forts were reinforced, walls rebuilt, garrisons doubled. But the feared invasion came. The same rivalries that had divided Germania divided it again. Rome held.
They could strike us, but they couldn't replace us.
But Rome does not grieve forever. Within a few years, the eagles marched again. Tiberius, and later his adopted son, Germanicus, crossed the Rhine, not to conquer, to avenge. Villages burned, fields turned to ash, temples fell beneath Roman fire. Germanicus wasn't claiming land, he was claiming justice. And deep within the forest, he found the place, the battlefield. Can you imagine it? Years later, the bones still there, scattered like pale leaves, skulls nailed to trees, rusting armor, altars black with dried blood. His soldiers dug trenches and buried what remained. No speeches, no music, just silence and the weight of memory.
They deserved better. We all did. Every soldier deserves more than mud and silence.
Germanicus fought Arminius again and again. He reclaimed 2 of the lost eagles. Yet even as Rome punished the tribes, the forest swallowed every trace of their victories. They could wound Germania, but never own it.
The forest, it doesn't forget. It waits, it watches, and it buries empires in its roots.
You know what's strange? Sometimes it's not victory that changes the world. It's the moment we realize we can be beaten. Teutoburg was that moment. After it, Augustus abandoned his dream of a Roman Germania. The Rhine and Danube became final borders, the edges of an empire that would last 400 more years. Beyond them, the wild, and the memory of what had been lost.
Perhaps that was the lesson all along. We thought everything could be tamed, but some lands, some spirits, are not meant for chains.
The defeat didn't just redraw borders. It reshaped Rome's mind. The illusion of invincibility cracked, and through that crack, truth slipped in. Even Rome had limits. Teutoburg became a scar. Generals studied it, poets mourned it, emperors whispered its name. And yet, out of that scar, a new world began. Without Teutoburg, Latin might have ruled the north. Without Teutoburg, the forest might have fallen under Roman stone. But because of it, the tribes endured. The Franks, the Saxons, the Goths. Their ancestors stood here, defying the greatest army on earth. Centuries later, when Rome finally fell, it was their descendants who rose from the ashes and built Europe on the memory of this forest.
If my failure drew that line, if it gave birth to a world that outlasted even Rome, then maybe defeat was not in vain.
Maybe that's true. Because sometimes history isn't written by those who win, but by those who fall and change the world by doing so. Part 5. Echoes from the Past. The forest remembers, even after 2,000 years. Teutoburg hasn't forgotten. When the wind moves through the trees, it sounds almost like armor shifting, or the slow march of men who never made it home. Anyone who walks there can feel it, the weight of something unfinished. For centuries, no one knew exactly where it happened. Historians guessed, poets imagined, legends twisted the truth. Some said near the Weser, others near the Lippe. The forest kept its secret, quietly, patiently, until one day, not so long ago, a farmer in Lower Saxony stumbled across a small green coin in his field. It carried the face of Augustus. That coin had traveled farther than most men ever would, and waited nearly 2 millennia for someone to notice it again.
The Emperor's image, still there after all this time. Even in death, he watches the frontier. Madonna mia. They thought they were leaving their mark on this land, but it seems the land left its mark on them instead.
That discovery led to others. Archaeologists began to dig, following the trail of those scattered coins. What they found turned myth back into memory. Fragments of armor crushed into the soil, bent spearheads, a helmet so perfectly preserved you could still see the outline of the man who wore it. And then, the mask. An iron faceplate from a cavalryman, blank, beautiful, eerily human. A Roman face, staring out of the dirt, silent for 20 centuries.
Perhaps he was one of mine. A man who trusted his commander to bring him home through the woods. He might have believed that honor alone would keep him safe. And now, his face has outlasted his name.
It wasn't just artifacts they found. Bones, too. Human and animal. Scattered, broken, tangled in the mud. Men who marched from the Mediterranean to the edge of the world, only to vanish into it. To stand there, with a piece of their armor in your hand, is to hear the past breathe again.
Maybe some cursed their fate. Maybe some understood. We soldiers, we don't choose where we die, only who we die for.
Every coin, every blade, every bone unearthed at Kalkriza tells the same story of pride, of loss, and of how thin the line is between order and chaos. But Teutoburg did not rest only in the earth. It lived in memory.
As it should, but just in a different meaning than I wanted.
The Romans made it a lesson, carved into the minds of generals. Never underestimate the wilderness. Emperors studied it. Poets mourned it. Historians debated it. Across the Rhine, the tribes told it differently. For them, it was not tragedy, but triumph. A story of cunning and freedom. And in those stories, Arminius became more than a man.
Arminius. He was clever, patient, disciplined. A man who understood both sides. His mind was Rome's gift and Rome's undoing.
Over time, his story grew larger than life. To the Romans, a traitor. To the Germans, a liberator. Centuries later, When Europe searched for its soul, his name returned. He was called Hermann, the defender of freedom, the one who defied the empire. By the 19th century, they built him in bronze, 40 meters tall, sword raised toward the sky, standing on a hill near Detmold. His blade points west, forever, toward the lands of Rome.
His likeness, cast in metal. There is no anger in that, only rispetto. He believed in something as fiercely as Rome believed in itself. Perhaps that's the danger of men like us. We mistake conviction for destiny.
Through men like him, and through men like Varus, the story endured. Because the details of the battle survived, not through monuments, but through memory. Ancient historians, Velleius Paterculus, Tacitus, Cassius Dio, Strabo, they wrote of it with shock, with sorrow. Each blamed something different: the gods, the forest, the arrogance of empire. But together, they ensured the world would remember.
They wrote of him, and of me, condemned, perhaps, but remembered. And that, for a Roman, is the closest thing to immortality.
Centuries later, storytellers returned to the forest. In film, on television, the rain fell again. The thunder of hooves echoed once more. In Barbarians, Arminius walked again between two worlds, Roman steel and Germanic blood. Earlier films like Die Hermannschlacht captured the same betrayal. Even documentaries revisit the woods, still trying to understand how it all went so wrong.
If these stories let people feel what that place once held, the fear, the courage, the silence, then perhaps they've done more for memory than marble ever could. Rome built in stone, but it is the stories that endure.
Perhaps that is the truest legacy. Not empire, not conquest, not even defeat, but the telling, the endless retelling. The forest still stands, and if someone walks beneath its trees, they may hear the sound of rain on leaves, the dull ring of iron, and the echo of a voice, carried by the mist. A Roman who once believed that order could outlast the wild, and learned that the wild outlasts everything. The forest remembers, and it always will. But still, sometimes, it's hard not to wonder, what if it hadn't ended this way? What if the storm had cleared, and the eagles had risen above the treetops once more? What if Rome had won?
Then perhaps the world itself would have been different. Perhaps even unrecognizable.
Maybe so. Because history isn't only what happened, it's everything that almost did. And that is where our story goes next. Part 6. What if? History often turns on the smallest edge. A word unsaid, a single step misplaced, a storm that came too soon. One ambush in a rainy forest redrew the map of Europe for centuries. But what if it hadn't? What if the legions of Publius Quinctilius Varus had survived the woods of Teutoburg? Imagine another dawn. The rain fades, the mist lifts, sunlight glints on polished shields. A messenger arrives in time, a warning shouted through the trees. The ambush breaks, the legions rally, and the eagles rise again above the forest.
Had it gone that way, the forest would have fallen silent beneath the sound of marching feet. The road would have reached the Elbe. The border I died to hold would have been no border at all. Dio mio, che visione.
Roman roads might have carved their way through the wilderness, bridges spanning rivers that had never known stone. Cities would rise where wooden halls once stood, forums, baths, temples gleaming under northern skies. Can you picture it? Latin echoing through the valleys, the steady rhythm of hammers instead of war drums, Roman law replacing the rule of the chieftain, Roman gods claiming the groves of the old spirits. And when Christianity came, would it have stopped at the Rhine or flowed east like sunlight breaking through the clouds? A Christian Germania, a Roman north. What kind of world would that have been?
Perhaps the gods of the forest would have forgiven it. Rome called it peace, though peace can be another name for silence.
If Teutoburg had gone the other way, the future might look unrecognizable. No Gothic migrations, no Saxons crossing the sea, no Vandals carving kingdoms from Africa's shore. Would the empire have lasted longer? Stronger? Or would victory have only made it softer? Maybe the fall of Rome would not come with fire, but with a quiet fading.
Una pace senza lotta è fragile. A single empire without resistance. It sounds peaceful, but peace without struggle. That grows brittle. Perhaps the world needs its borders to remember who it is.
There was another road too, the one where Arminius lived long enough to finish what he began. If he had united the tribes, forged a kingdom of his own, Germania might have stood as Rome's equal. A northern empire of oak and iron, proud, fierce, free.
Two empires instead of one. Rome of marble, Germania of wood and wind. Perhaps they would have met not as enemies, but as brothers in arms.
When the Huns thundered west, maybe those two worlds would have fought side by side, legions and warriors beneath the same banner. Could the migrations have been stopped before they began? Could the Western Empire have survived? A dual world, Rome in the south, Germania in the north, each shaping the other, each keeping the balance alive.
A partnership instead of a wound. The forest, no longer feared, but trusted. That might have been a world worth dying for.
In that world, there might have been no dark ages, no centuries of silence between civilizations. Rome's order joined with Germania's wild heart. Discipline and freedom walking side by side. Christianity still spreading, but the old gods lingering too. Sharing the same sky. Would that have made Europe stronger or stranger? But it wasn't to be. Arminius fell to the daggers of his own kin. The tribes fractured. Freedom endured, but without unity it drifted like smoke, and when the storm came from the east, they did not stand beside Rome. They became the tide that swept through it.
The world was shaped by our failures, not our victories. Perhaps that is what history truly is, the sum of the chances we never took.
Teutoburg was not only a defeat, it was a door, and behind it lay 1,000 paths never walked. The forest closed again. The echoes faded into the rain. Yet somewhere, between the trees and the thunder, the ghosts of those other worlds still breathe, a whisper, a question, lingering in the air. What if? The forest is quiet now. The echoes of Teutoburg fade into the rain, leaving only the whisper of wind between the trees. Rome has survived, wounded, wiser, still hungry for control. Its legions return to the Rhine, its pride bruised, its ambitions waiting. Because empires never truly stop. They only look for the next frontier. And far to the south, another fire is already burning. In the hills of Judea, rebellion rises. Temples echo with defiance, prophets call for freedom, and Rome prepares, once more, to remind the world who rules it. From the mist of Germania to the heat of the desert, the next storm is gathering.
I am Titus Flavius, commander of the legions of Rome. The emperor sends me to restore peace to a land that will not bow. But peace comes at a price. The city ahead of me is holy, its people fierce, their faith unshakable. Still, Rome will march, we always do.
And so, the legions turn toward Jerusalem. Their banners rise against the sun, the dust of their march thick as smoke. Before them stands a city that has defied kings, prophets, and time itself, a city that will not surrender easily. Do you want to know what happens when the city of God meets the might of Rome? What this clash leaves behind, not only in the ashes, but in the world we still live in today? Then march with us to the next chapter, the destruction of Jerusalem, year 70 CE.